Cracks in the Facade, Unveiling a Lifetime of Deception. There was a time when I believed the lies would last forever, that the world I lived in, crafted by my father's manipulation, was as solid as the church walls that surrounded us. But deception, no matter how intricately spun, cannot hold up indefinitely. It began with small moments, like the first cracks in a dam before the flood comes rushing in. Those cracks were unsettling at first, whispers of truth that I tried to ignore. But once you see them, it's impossible to unsee them. And once you hear that inner voice, the voice of discernment, it only gets louder. Have you ever had that nagging feeling that something isn't quite right, but you push it aside because facing it seems too daunting? That was my life, filled with those moments. I'd see the way my father treated people behind closed doors, harsh, dismissive, far from the man of God he portrayed on the pulpit. I'd notice the inconsistencies in his sermons, how he twisted scripture to suit his purposes, yet something in my spirit would stir, knowing deep down that it wasn't the truth. We have a tendency to hold on to comfort even when it's built on lies because the alternative, facing the truth, is terrifying. And for years I did just that. I told myself that I was overthinking, that the problem was with me, not with him. But the more I tried to suppress the dissonance, the more it grew. The cracks in my world were becoming too big to ignore. One of the first major cracks appeared when I began to witness how others in the church started to question my father. It was subtle at first, a few murmured concerns, a whisper in the hallway. I remember one woman in particular, a longtime member of the church who confronted my father after a service. She challenged his interpretation of a scripture that in my mind had always seemed perfectly clear. But in that moment, I saw something I had never seen before: doubt in someone else's eyes. I watched as my father shut her down, dismissing her concerns with a wave of his hand and a patronizing smile. He made her feel small, insignificant, as though her questioning was an affront to God himself. And while I had seen him do this before, something about this particular moment stuck with me. It was as if a light was flickering on in the back of my mind, showing me the truth that had always been there, hidden in plain sight. That was the first time I realized that the problem wasn't with me, it was with him. My father wasn't infallible. He wasn't the embodiment of truth as I had been led to believe. He was human, deeply flawed, and more importantly, deeply invested in maintaining his own version of reality, no matter the cost. It wasn't just the congregation that began to notice the cracks. My mother, who had always stood by his side in quiet submission, started to change too. She had been the dutiful pastor's wife for as long as I could remember, but there was a new fire in her eyes, a new distance between her and my father. She was waking up, just like I was, and though we didn't speak about it directly, I could feel the shift. The more I watched, the more I questioned. The more I questioned, the more I realized that my entire world had been built on a foundation of lies. My father's truth was a carefully constructed facade, designed to protect his power and control. And now the cracks in that facade were growing, revealing the truth beneath.